Hey friends, my name is Donna Amadon, and today we continue our study through Acts, looking at chapter 18. If you've ever visited a large city, you know each one has its own flavor and flair. New York has its iconic buildings, Boston its history, Nashville its music. Well, the cities in Paul's day were no different. In Acts chapter 18, we see Corinth, which could be considered an ancient sin city. It had a temple with thousands of prostitutes. In fact, the phrase to Corinthianize meant to engage in sexual immorality. No doubt, Corinth was rough. And if you're like me, you'd expect people would reject the gospel. And though Paul had a tough start, we see something surprising as the chapter unfolds. In the beginning of chapter 18, Paul reasons in the synagogue, and no surprise, the people did not respond well. Verse 6 says, "And when they opposed and reviled him, Paul shook out his garments and said to them, 'Your blood be on your own heads. I am innocent. From now on, I will go to the Gentiles.'" Well, you might think this was Paul's exit from Corinth. Instead, he moves next door to the synagogue. And here we see something very exciting. Verse 8 tells us, "Crispus, the ruler of the synagogue, believed in the Lord together with his entire household, and many of the Corinthians, hearing Paul, believed and were baptized." Now, let's pause here and not miss this detail. In a dark and corrupt city like Corinth, many people were coming to Jesus. I think this is a good reminder for us because it's easy to look at our place of work, our neighborhood, or even our country and think there is no hope because sin is everywhere and people seem so far from God. But seeing the response in Corinth reminds me that though people were hard on the outside, many times people are hurting on the inside. Sin and its thrills only last for a season. And when that season ends, which it does, people are ready for something more. Now, we don't know exactly how Paul was feeling in Corinth, but we get a glimpse by what happens next. In verse 9, the Lord spoke to him and said, "Do not be afraid, but go on speaking and do not be silent, for I am with you, and no one will attack you to harm you, for I have many in this city who are my people." What an encouragement. God's saying, Paul, don't be afraid. I am with you. Now, these words likely calmed any fears that Paul had, and more than that, they let Paul know that many more people would respond to the gospel. And so, Paul did indeed stay in Corinth for a year and a half. You know, I love walking through the book of Acts with you because even in these very short passages, we find so much wisdom. I want to leave you with two quick thoughts. To begin, remember that people may be ready to hear about Jesus, even in the most unexpected places. You might think that young couple next door, or that friend at the gym, or your coworkers are beyond hope. But what if God is stirring their hearts? What if they're wanting more? What if they're longing for connection with God? And you can be there to share God's love. Secondly, just as God was with Paul, He is with us. God told Paul, "I'm with you. Don't be afraid. Keep sharing the gospel." And I love this reminder. You know, God has not asked us to share the gospel alone. He invites us to partner with Him in His work. And when we are faithful to love others in His name, God moves in beautiful ways. So this week, pray that God would reveal those people who are searching. It could be someone at your job, in your neighborhood, or a friend group, or even that stranger you see each day. Trust that God is already at work around you. Remember, even in the darkest place, and especially in the darkest place, there are hearts ready to hear the hope of Jesus.